The second big thing I want to get to involves one of the teams and the programs I was just talking about, and that's the Arizona Wildcats, who are seeking their first Final Four appearance since 2001 when Arizona lost in the national championship game to Duke. It's not talked about that much because Arizona is always viewed as one of the best programs in college basketball. But Arizona has only been to 4 Final Fours. And all of those Final Fours have happened under Lute Olson. 1988, 1994, the national championship run in 1997, and then 2001, the last time Arizona was in the Final Four. Arizona, though, is surging right now again like a team that can break that spell. Now, Arizona has been deep in the NCAA tournament many other times since 2001. Sean Miller, who is now the coach at Texas, took Arizona to the Final Eight, the Elite Eight, 3 separate times. 2011, lost to eventual national champion UConn. Jamel Horn had a chance to win that game for Arizona. He missed a 3. 2014, lost on the last possession to Wisconsin. 2015, lost to Wisconsin in a game where the Badgers put on an unbelievable shooting display. Tommy Lloyd has Arizona in a position to get back to that point. But Arizona, we have to remember, under Tommy Lloyd, has not been past the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. That is a barrier that this team is going to have to get through and should have an opportunity to do so if things continue. But I want to point this out. Arizona might be 19-0, but Arizona is also going to have to encounter landmine after landmine in the Big 12 the rest of the season. Arizona has 12 regular season games remaining. These are all games on the docket for the Wildcats before they get to the Big 12 tournament. 2 games against BYU, 2 games against Kansas, a road trip to Houston, a home game against Texas Tech, and a home game against Iowa State. That's 7 games against teams that are good enough to get to the Final Four, in my opinion. That is a tough opportunity for Arizona to navigate in terms of being in a situation where it can cleanly get to Selection Sunday as the number 1 overall seed. But that's what Arizona's playing for right now. Because if you are Tommy Lloyd, and if you are an Arizona basketball fan, you know as well as I do that nobody, and I mean nobody, travels on the West Coast like Arizona fans. So if Arizona holds serve, and I have Arizona right now as the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament, Arizona would start at Viejas Arena in San Diego, and then if it advanced there, San Jose for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. But this is only January. But the thing I'm thinking, watching Arizona last night against Cincinnati, and it turned out to be a lopsided win for the Wildcats in Tucson, as it usually is, and Arizona will next host West Virginia in Tucson Saturday afternoon on CBS. Arizona is going to be an extremely difficult team to prepare for, especially on a 2-day turnaround in the NCAA tournament, because this is, in my opinion, as balanced a team that we have seen for a number 1 seed. As of today, 7 different players on Arizona average between 8.7 points per game and 14.6 points per game. The guy that averages 8.7 points per game, Anthony Del Orso, has come off the bench twice this season and helped Arizona win major games away from home. One was a couple of weeks ago at TCU, and another was against UCLA in November when he came off the bench to have 20. Del Orso and Toby Awaka are essentially 6 and 7 starters for Arizona. They essentially have 7 starters. And speaking of Toby Awaka, I have been outspoken about this for years, but I think we should definitely implement sooner rather than later a national 6-man of the year award in college basketball. It is something I have felt passionately about for years. It is something that obviously has not been put into fruition yet. But I think if you're looking and evaluating right now at who the best 6-man in college basketball is, unequivocally to me, it's Toby Awaka. And he's one part of that troika up front for the Wildcats, Koa Pete and Mo Krivich, the other 2 guys, that give Arizona as formidable a front line as there is in the sport. But looking at the balance now, if you are the opponent, you're looking at a team that has so many ways to beat you. One night it could be Braden Burris. One night it could be Koa Pete, as we saw on opening night in Las Vegas against Florida. Another night, it could obviously be Mo Krivish or Braden Burris. Ivan Karchenkov has had moments where he can make big shots. This is as balanced a team that we have seen in a long time in terms of a team that is projected to be a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, talking about one seeds in the NCAA tournament, I now am done talking about Nebraska as a team that's a feel-good story and a Cinderella story, and this is like St. Joe's in 2004. No, this isn't, the little engine that could anymore. This is a team in Nebraska that, as of today, I would have as a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. And when I sat here a couple of months ago and I talked about the notion that if Nebraska wins an NCAA tournament game for the first time ever in 2026, I'm going to fly to Lincoln. I'm going to put my credit card down in a bar for 1 hour, and I'm going to throw the fans a happy hour. I thought that Nebraska had a chance to win a game in the NCAA tournament. I did. I did not think that Nebraska would be a one seed potentially in the NCAA tournament. But here are the facts. Nebraska, compared to other teams in the Big Ten that it would be competing with for a potential number one seed in the Midwest region, has better wins right now in conference than Nebraska and Purdue and Michigan. Michigan, obviously, metrics-wise, boosted everything by the dominance and the margin of victory. Purdue also got big wins in the non-conference at Alabama and then against Texas Tech, in the Cayman Islands or in the Bahamas. But with that said, Nebraska in conference play has a win over Michigan State at home, has also a road win at Illinois, and also has a dominant win early in Big Ten play over Wisconsin, which is amplified because Wisconsin went on the road and beat Michigan. Also, some news out of Nebraska just before we got on the air. Fred Hoiberg texted me and told me that Braden Frager, who left last night's game against Washington with an ankle injury, has been diagnosed with a sprained ankle and is day-to-day. This is obviously great news for the Huskers, who need Frager as a piece in reserve off the bench. He's averaging in double figures. This was a big-time factor for Nebraska a couple of weeks ago on the road at Indiana. So Braden Frager is day-to-day. That's per Fred Hoiberg. That's great news for the Huskers, who, again, as of today, I have as a number one seed in the NCAA tournament. You can see the rest of my bracket on Friday on Twitter at 9 a.m. And we will continue to talk more bracket projections and all of that good stuff as we get closer and closer to Selection Sunday, which everybody knows is just 7 weeks from Sunday. It's going to be here like that. But here's another thing I want to piggyback off of. One of the reasons why I am not getting too involved in the Miami, Ohio, or St. Louis, or George Mason at-large talk to the NCAA tournament, because there is so much basketball to play. And those schools who are from non-power conferences have significantly more landmines than these teams in power conferences when we're talking about competing for at-large bids to the NCAA tournament. And this is something that is just a fact of life. If you are a bubble team in the Big Ten, like an Indiana, like an Ohio State, that is who a George Mason or a St. Louis or a Utah State or New Mexico has to beat out. And you have to remember that. You have to remember that a couple of years ago, Pat Kelsey, when he was at Charleston, led Charleston to an incredible run, beating major teams early on in non-conference play. And Charleston was not going to be in the NCAA tournament if it did not win the CAA tournament title game. I believe that was a 30-win team that wound up losing to San Diego State in the first round of the NCAA tournament in 2023. Now, with all that said, one year's bracket does not compete to another year's bracket, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is only January. The